Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because, wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack.
There's a name for that. What fresh hell?
Laughing in the face of motherhood. Don't judge me. With Margaret Abels
and Amy Wilson.
Hello, have you met a 5-year-old?
A podcast that solves today's parenting dilemmas
so you don't have to. This is literally impossible. I might as well try to climb Mount Everest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy. And this week, we are going to talk about when typical behavior tips into something more and how that thing that you notice in your kid is a thing. And like, it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just is a thing.
Yeah.
And there's a name for that. So like, there's different things that we go through with our kids. There's a name for that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to panic about everything that you see happening. But it's good to know about this stuff. I feel like the things we're going to discuss today, there are useful takeaways wherever your kid is on the spectrum.
That's right. Yeah. Because I think two sides of it. One, we've talked about the idea of like ADD. Oh, yeah, everyone's ADD. Oh, yeah, I forgot my car keys. I'm ADD. This kind of over-labeling of stuff. But then on the flip side, I think that understanding the labels that are out there can really help us feel better because we can sometimes feel like my kid is difficult, annoying, or bad when if you understand that that is actually a thing that happens to most kids the first week of school, let's say, it helps you see it in a context that helps you be part of the solution versus just this kid is driving me crazy.
Right. You're not alone. And then there's something you can do about it.
Yes.
And the way in was one of our favorite terms is after-school restraint collapse, which is completely self-explanatory. We always try to give credit where credit is due. So Andrea Lowen Nair is a parenting educator from Ontario. She coined this term, after-school restraint collapse. And she used it to describe the kids who hold it together at school all day, managing the demands, the expectations, sit on your spot on the rug, finally come home to a place they feel safe, and then the stress or emotional load they've been carrying gets released in meltdowns or crying or emotional outbursts. This happens to literally every kid, right? But then it really happens to some kids.
Yeah. And this is a very common discussion that people have with schools. My kid is so difficult. My kid is overwhelming me. I cannot handle this kid at all. And then you go in at school, they're like, oh, that's odd because Bobby's a little angel here all day. And so what you feel like is everything that's happening with Bobby is because I don't know how to deal with it and I'm a bad parent.
Right.
But Bobby is really understanding, and maybe also Bobby functions better in a high structure environment, which is information that you can use. But also maybe Bobby is working really hard at school all day and then falling apart when they get home, which is maybe another explanation of what's going on.
I've had more than one professional explain to me during my parenting career that the fact that your kid doesn't do something at home that they do at school, or they do something at school that they don't do at home, is in fact a very good sign, and not a sign of your inferior parenting, but a sign of their skills being there, just developing.
Explain that a little more, because I think it's interesting. So the good is that They have the skills. They're just not ready to use them all day, and they feel safer at home to not use them.
That's right. This kind of leads us into our first example of, is this a thing or is this just where the kid is? So say, does your kid have temper tantrums on the daily? And then in between is also not really in a good mood, is pretty much a total crankster, pretty much always. Always. And that would include at school they're cranky and at home they're cranky.
Okay.
Like if at home they're cranky, but at school they're fine, maybe they need more sleep at night. If at home they're cranky 100% of the time, and then at school they're also cranky like a lot of the time and lots of tantrums, there's a name for that. It's called disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. And I'm not saying if your kid is a super cranky kid, this month that means your kid has DMDD and you have to rush to a child psychologist. There's a range, right? But knowing about this and what this is and how to know if it's a thing you need to put some scaffolding and attention around, that's the point of this episode.
Got it. Yeah. And everything exists on a spectrum, right?
Yes, literally everything.
Yes. And I will go to my sister-in-law, Christy Martin. You can look up her episode. We had her on. She used to use a phrase with me that I thought was very helpful. It's a problem when it's a problem for you or your kid. So that I felt like was a really good arbiter for me of, okay, is this a problem that's getting in the way? And this is a therapist. We'll talk about this too. I've talked a lot about having OCD. And sometimes my OCD is kind of almost in remission, like I'm touching 2 things a day and I'm just going through my day. It's not really a problem for me. I've got it kind of under control. But sometimes I'm like, I can barely function because I have to touch a million things and my anxiety is very high. Then it's a problem for me. It might always be there, but when is it a problem? And therefore, when do you react and what do you do?
So let's go back to the DMDD, putting this framework around it. It's interesting to note that this came into place, this diagnosis of disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. It was actually put in place about 10 years ago because kids were being diagnosed as being bipolar because they just were having tantrums all the time.
Right.
And psychiatrists were like, that's not it. That's not what's happening here. There's sort of a specific childhood thing happening here. The main problem was the temper tantrums and just the irritability all the time. It didn't mean they were bipolar, but there's something happening. So that's where this disruptive mood dysregulation disorder came in 2013.
Is that something that only kids have?
Yes, I believe so, that it's for children. Yeah.
Got it.
So let's talk about the things that are typical developmentally appropriate behavior and when you might want to look into some more support. Every kid has occasional tantrums, especially toddlers and preschoolers. They're tired, they're hungry, they're in a new place, whatever. Those meltdowns tend to be short-lived and they can recover from them. 10 minutes later, they're playing. If your kid is having severe, intense outbursts that last a long time, the down mood really persists and the mood swings are getting in the way. They're a problem for the kid, right? They're getting in the way of friendships. Yeah. They're getting in the way at school. They're getting in the way. Okay, you might need a little more support here. Irritability or frustration that's specific, like fighting with your brother over a toy, even if it's chronic, if it's specific, okay, it's situational, right? If it's chronic, like you're falling apart over I don't like this kind of sandwich. And then 10 minutes later, also about something else. If like everything's making you super upset, that's a sign that this kid maybe is struggling.
I mean, it reminds me of adult therapeutic diagnoses that depression is different than being sad sometimes. That, like, these are chronic and probably less attached. Again, we're not medical professionals, but we're talking from our own experience. The idea that depression is less tied maybe to circumstances, right? That like you just, this pervasive feeling of hopelessness or sadness is not, oh, I just lost my job. You might feel depressed about that, but that depression is a little bit more chronic and a little less attached to events.
A sad thing happening. That's right. That's right. And then, the last thing would be if it's causing significant distress for the kid, for you, whatever, these are things you need support. And again, I want to underline, like, I don't want people listening to be like, does my kid have DMDD? Like, if you know, but you can look this up and the strategies and the things that they employ to help kids who are sort of chronically upset recover more quickly. There's useful things to explore here, even if your kid is just a little more cranky than the average person. You don't need a diagnosis to say like, okay, this is something my kid needs more support around.
Yeah. And I think on the flip side, sometimes when you have a kid with a diagnosis and you try to explain your experience with that. A lot of people react and say, all kids are like that. All kids have temper tantrums. All kids struggle with transitions. But you know enough kids to know that your kid is on a very specific end of the spectrum with these problems. And so, yes, I see a lot of people, I think in an attempt to be helpful, say, well, no kid wants to go to bed. Okay, but if you're having a 3-hour fight every night at bedtime where your kid is throwing things and screaming at the top of their lungs for hours at a time, that is not on the normal spectrum.
Right. Don't be talked out of that.
Yeah. And maybe I shouldn't even use the word normal, but it's outside. It's causing a problem in the household.
Right. Right.
All kids fight with their siblings. Okay. Yeah. All kids do fight with their siblings, but something might be going on where you're like, this is just too much for us.
Yeah. Is your kid very attuned to or worried about being rejected or criticized or socially excluded? Sometimes even perceiving that rejection where you can see pretty clearly that's not actually happening or that other kids wouldn't feel that way.
Yeah, I can see this one. I definitely know like adults who have this as well.
Yeah. So there's a name for that. It's called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So this one was coined by Dr. William Dodson, who is an ADHD. He's one of the top 2 living specialists in ADHD, particularly in adults, which is interesting. So he studied ADHD more in adults, as you were just saying, for about 25 years. And he observed in his clinical work with ADHD adults that some individuals had extremely strong emotional reactions to rejection, even when it was minor or even just perceived. And it causes intense emotional pain that can cause a big emotional reaction. It can cause a very rapid shift in mood, and it can be really hard to talk yourself out of or come down from if you have rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Yeah. And I think as an adult or a parent, we sometimes have the tendency to be like, forget about it. Don't worry about it. Amy, they were just having a party and it wasn't your friend group. It's not about you, but in a way that can be kind of dismissive of a feeling that it really doesn't matter whether or not the feeling your child is having makes sense. If they're feeling it, it's real.
Right. Well, when this can tip into something that might need more support, for example, so many kids would be upset over being actually excluded.
Right.
Right. And it's going to happen to your kids sooner or later. The point is not like make sure your kid is never excluded. That won't work. But that's something that's upsetting. But one way that you can tell like, oh, this is something that this person or I as their parent might need some more support around is when they avoid, the child or the adult with rejection sensitivity dysphoria will actually avoid activities, group activities, or going places or meeting new people out of fear of rejection. Like they're proactively avoiding social contact. Because what if it doesn't go well?
Right.
And that can clearly get in the way, you know, with school, with self-esteem, things like that. That's somebody who might need more support.
And developing a fear around, right, getting things wrong, this intense feeling of I have to act in a certain way to be accepted.
Right. And in this case, it's like you could have a girl who's a people pleaser and maybe there's a little bit of an alpha who's kind of running the show when you're seeing your kid try too hard to please that person. Or you could have somebody with rejection sensitivity dysphoria who, you know, doesn't want to ever participate in the activities outside of school because what if people don't like them? Even when you can see, people might be like, hey, Brenda. I'm using a very 70s name. They're like, hi, Brenda. But
Bob and Brenda,
but Brenda's like, nobody likes me. Yeah. So it's something that is real. I've actually talked to a psychologist who this is what he studies. This is his thing, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And it's a very interesting thing that people can get stuck in because it's so out of proportion sometimes to what's actually happening.
Yeah. And I think it can be helpful for kids to be able to say, like, this is a way that people feel sometimes, and it comes from a thing. And it might even come from something kind of tangible, right? It might come from a fact that maybe a parent left when the child was young or whatever thing you can kind of tie it to, or even just having had the kind of 7th grade, like the whole school turned on you overnight for reasons you don't understand. But that really being able to connect the dots for kids to say, hey, you had this really bad experience that might be triggering for you this feeling when it is not necessarily what's going on in every situation.
Right. Right. And that's helpful for a kid facing rejection, period, right?
Yes.
When if they don't like you, you don't need them because they're not real friends doesn't really fit the bill. I think getting more into what is this fear of rejection and helping the kid in an age appropriate way think about it might be really helpful.
Yeah, I have something else to say about that. We'll be right back.
Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH. My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com. Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, and it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING.
I mean, we've talked to people who are experts on many of these things, and I can definitely hear my grandparents, and I mean, my mom was a therapist, so less so her, but this idea of everything's a diagnosis these days. Back in my day, kids made friends and they didn't have, blah, 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 diagnosis. And there was no such thing as rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria. It's not so much that you need to diagnose to pathologize behavior. You're diagnosing this to say, this is a normal human reaction to previous experiences. And then there's help to get us back to a place where you're not being constantly informed by previous experiences. I'll give you the example of PTSD. So I know people in my life who have PTSD, and it is a lot of work to be like, listen, you spent X number of years in a war zone. And so your nervous system is primed to see every situation as heightened and fight or flight. And what if something bad happens? You're no longer in that situation, but you're still reacting as if you're in that situation. And so therefore, PTSD is not oh, it's a fancy way of saying you had a hard time once. It's saying your operating system is doing this for a very specific reason that makes sense within the context of your experiences. But now that we know what it is, we can kind of focus in and say, let's address what's changed in your circumstances so that we're not reacting from a place that doesn't make sense for our circumstances.
Right. It isn't like you have DMDD and so you get to behave however you want, whenever you want, kid. It's like, this is something that needs more scaffolding and support. And now let's look at it, right? Somebody with PTSD, these just call it shell shock and send you home. It wasn't better back then. It still happened. They didn't do anything about it.
Or you were just called a jerk. And it's like, well, actually, you're having a very specific physiological response to something that you need help dealing with.
Here's one that I think almost all of us can identify with in some way, shape, or form. Does your kid seem to have an extreme resistance to everyday demands or requests, even really little small ones, like to put your shoes on or to brush your teeth or go get started on your homework? Does that sound familiar to you?
I know this one, Amy. Can I guess?
Yes.
Pathological demand avoidance.
Ding, 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 ding. Pathological demand avoidance was first introduced in the 1980s by British psychologist Elizabeth Newson. She worked with kids with autism in particular, and she noticed that some of them, so like William Dodson noticed some people with ADHD that he was already studying had this specific rejection sensitivity. Elizabeth Newson realized that some kids with autism she was working with, but not all, had this extreme pathological demand avoidance. And yeah, I mean, I'm like, we're joking out a little bit because it's like, hello, have you met a 5-year-old? But it's a spectrum, right? And some kids are really going to be out the other end on that, and it can get pretty hard to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, all of these things, again, every kid does them, but is it a problem?
Right. Some kids
for you or the child, or the way they function in school.
Right. Well said. So all children resist demands sometimes. There's going to be some pushback. I don't want to go to bed. I don't want to, they're figuring out their willpower and their self-determination. That's normal. In pathological demand avoidance, every demand is resisted, even for things that they might want, which I thought was an interesting thing to highlight. They could want the piece of cake, but being told to sit down and have it, the demand avoidance is more present and appealing. Right.
Yeah. And it's also, it helps you, I feel like, as a parent. I have a child who we referenced as Dr. No for several years because whatever this child was asked, the answer was no. And eventually, I don't know how much we thought about it as pathological demand avoidance or anything specific, but we got better about how we approach certain things. And I got pretty clear at a certain point that no was not an acceptable answer. And so how can we get there? Because I will say this child then would go and have a great time. There was just something, I still use this quote all the time because at some point we were saying, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Trying to give all these options. And this child finally said, I don't want to do. And I think of that all the time. And sometimes I say it, I'm like, I don't want to do. And I get it. I understand it. But whether it was transitions or I'm happy where I am, I don't want to go to the pumpkin patch, even though I might kind of know. Everything for him was like the gym. I know it'll be good for me and I know I will feel good to have gone, but I don't want to go.
I don't want to. Yeah. And that the first answer is no to everything, but there's another answer behind it. They might really want to go to the playground. That's what they need some support around, maybe.
And it's that moment of trying to become the detective of, is this a child who has felt very out of control in their lives, or something has happened that has made them feel out of control? I'm thinking of somebody I know who's in this situation, and, something happened in their lives that was very out of control. And the kid now is very demanding of control constantly. And it's like, okay, we can put those two sides of this puzzle together and help the child hopefully understand that for them, the feeling of being out of control is much scarier than it is for maybe your typical child, because for them, the feeling of being out of control has had really difficult consequences.
Another thing is that this is an iceberg, right? And if your kid resists every single thing and just really lives in this place a lot of the time, it could also be anxiety. It doesn't have to have been brought on by a specific inciting incident or trauma or whatever. They could just be anxious, and this is how it's manifesting. And so if you have a kid who's just doing this all the time, it might be time to get curious if this is really anxiety coming out in this way.
And I think also ages and stages is super interesting with this, because a kid might become more demand avoidant as a teenager in a way that is developmentally appropriate, right? Like, I'm not going to have mom tell me what to do every step of the way. I'm going to do it by myself. I don't need help with this. And you have the 2-year-old who's like, I do it. I put shoes on, they want to be independent. And then you see it again as teenagers. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me. I know, to everything that you say. And some of this stuff may be seasonal. And then some of this stuff, and I just had an experience with one of my kids where I would describe one of their behaviors as having been very much in remission, that this was something that transitions and new information were really hard as a young person. And as they're older, just the other day, I, not thinking about it because we haven't been dealing with it at all, kind of announced a major change of plans. And this kid got very upset. And I thought, I forget now that this kid they're a cruise ship. They don't like tight turns. And so even though they're older and integrating things much better and having an easier time, I still have to remember that this child, who's not really a child anymore, still has a core issue with, I'm going to make a huge announcement out of the blue and expect everyone to move on.
Right. And the correct support for that isn't more discipline. It isn't punishment. It isn't this. I'm talking for a younger kid. You're not going to punish a 17-year-old for talking back. But it is about understanding routines. And in my house, it got a lot smoother when we realized the fewer transitions, the better. Like, no, let's not stop home to just use the bathroom and change our shoes real quick and then get back in the car. Like, no, we're going to bring what we need with us to the soccer game to go right to the birthday party. You can't transition in and out of the house. The more transitions, the more likely you're going to have a meltdown. And so fewer transitions, right? And it's leading towards less yelling and fewer meltdowns.
More
and how
calm,
you get
more
there.
Peace.
Right. And you get there once you start to look at the strategies that are suggested for this. Even if your kid doesn't have a diagnosis of pathological demand avoidance, some of the strategies that are suggested to support it might be really useful.
And even for ourselves, like, I am a person who the idea of stopping for gas is insurmountable for me. I just how could I possibly do that? I don't want to, God forbid, maybe I would run into someone. I would have to talk to someone. I have to stop my car. Like, I'm on my way home. And then I can say to myself a little bit, like, that is your crazy pathological demand avoidance head talking. It is actually not that hard to stop for gas. Or sometimes I feel that way, like, pack a suit. We had a family wedding this weekend. Pack an outfit for all 5 of us to go to a wedding. Like, this is literally impossible. I might as well try to climb Mount Everest. It's like, okay, just remember that is a little bit of your brain telling you something that's not true.
I really don't want to. All right, this is one that's all over the news right now. If your kid is a picky eater, but a really, really picky eater, their list of acceptable foods that they'll eat is getting shorter instead of longer. Just the thought of mealtime is causing actual distress, and going to a restaurant, whatever, it's getting bigger and bigger. And the grandparents saying, well, he'll eat when he's hungry is not really playing out that way at all. There's a name for that. There's a name to consider anyway, which is called avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, or ARFID.
Yeah, this is something that you hear more and more about. And I will say a lot of these behaviors and terms are sometimes comorbid or come along with a diagnosis of ADHD or autism or other spectrum disorders.
Yeah.
And ARFID is one. And let me tell you, if you have never been in it, you don't know what you don't know. Because I know kids in my life they will only eat one brand of chicken nuggets that is hard to find. And you're seeing the Facebook posts. If you are ever in a supermarket and see this, please buy every box. I will pay you back. And you can look at it and be like, well, they're not going to starve to death. Why don't you just feed them something different? It is more complicated than that. And watch yourself if you have a kid who's a bit of a picky eater, but you figured out a way. I've never had a kid who had ARFID, but I have kids in my life who have. And it is much more than just they'll eat when they're hungry. They will not eat when they're hungry. And it also is really like most eating disorders. you're focusing on the food, and the food is not really central to the problem. It's a feeling of control and anxiety, and the food is a symptom of something that's going on in terms of fear and anxiety and what is more integral to your personal control than putting things in your mouth. Like it's a very, and forcing kids to eat. And the good news is there's a lot of people who specialize in this, and it can feel, I think because people don't understand ARFID, it can feel very like, I must be a bad parent. And there are going to be a lot of people who tell you that this is happening because you are a bad parent.
Right. There's a pretty clear-cut sign, if you're listening to this, like, oh, they're pretty picky. If your kid has ARFID, they're going to start to drop off their growth curve. If they're actually not eating enough to meet their nutritional needs, your pediatrician is going to discuss this with you. There's a food aversion that is greater than the biological need to eat. It's pretty clear cut. Some kids are picky eaters. I had an extremely picky eater, but he was always on his growth chart. And so while I put a lot of attention into like, let's grow the list, let's food chaining, which is if your kid will eat a, oh my gosh, what do they call, like a wrap, like a flatbread.
Yes.
That has
tortilla.
Yeah, like a tortilla. Get your kid to eat like a little bit of cheese rolled up in a tortilla. Then the next time you try a little bit of turkey and cheese rolled up in a tortilla. And all of a sudden, like something rolled up in a tortilla becomes the acceptable food.
Yeah.
That worked in my case because my kid did not need this extra level of professional support. But yeah, ARFID is more serious. There's signs of fatigue. Meals are very stressful. And sometimes I've seen this come into play too with the people I know in my life who have kids with ARFID, that the kid has a concern about choking.
Yeah.
And it gets very serious. If this is something that sounds like you want to consider for your kid, then bring it up at your next pediatrician appointment, and they'll either definitively reassure you or they'll help you get more help.
I have one more thing to say about ARFID after this.
All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that: taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE.
You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about, like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today. DSW, let us surprise you.
And now, if moms had spirit days.
From the What Fresh Health podcast.
It's Monday, moms, and our theme is yoga pants and a sweatshirt day. We figured we'd start it simple and kind of ease you into the whole concept.
Tuesday's theme is At Least You Tried. Put on a smear of lipstick, wear matching socks, literally anything to make it look like at least you even tried.
Okay, Wednesday's theme is a little more advanced. It's put on a bra day. Okay, all right, fine. T-shirt bras count, I guess.
Thursday's theme is pajama day. Stay in your pajamas all day. But then tomorrow you should really try to get out of your pajamas, okay? Promise? Just one day where you get out of your pajamas?
TGIF, moms, it's Friday, and your theme today is Wacky Hair Day. And it looks like you're all set already. Do you even own a hairbrush?
This has been If Moms Had Spirit Days
From the What Fresh Hell podcast. I think the very important is to take out of picky eating, ARFID, anything. You got to take the shame out of it, because I know that what happens, and I had a kid who did not have ARFID, but was on the borderline, like a very picky eater. And then it was like, well, just give them vitamins. I'm like, okay, you want to come to my house and try to get my kid to take a vitamin? It's not, get the chewy ones. They're good. They're easy for kids. No, like a Flintstones vitamin, I might as well just give my kid a plate of sushi. You can say, this is what's going on in our house. This is what I need help from. And if you're getting feedback that's like, just make them eat, just give them this vitamin, just because I remember even just having a picky eater that people would say, like, then just make sure they're getting a vitamin every day. I mean, I could ground up a vitamin in a vanilla milkshake, and this kid would take one sip and be like, this tastes weird. And I think it does tend to exist on the same line as sensory. Similarly, like, you don't like a tag in your shirt, you can't stand that sensation. Tastes are very strong for sensory kids. And so you might say, like, every kid likes Flintstones vitamins. I ate 20 of them one day when I was a kid. And, you know, my mom thought she had to take me to the hospital. Like, every kid loves them. Maybe not your kid. And it's take out the part of the story where you're like, I have to be very defensive and be like, okay, I'll get them to take a vitamin, and then get home and think, there's no way I'm getting my kid to take a vitamin.
Right. I mean, and look, there's some medical providers who will be pretty old-fashioned, and they're thinking about this too. And if you know there's more going on, then find another provider. You
know the term ARFID now, and you can Google that, and you can say it. And this is what I love about these kind of diagnoses. I believe me, I have a little bit of thing like, oh, every kid's got a special something now.
Yeah.
But it does give you terminology to say, this is not picky eating, this is ARFID. It's that thing. So don't tell me to go give my kid a Flintstones vitamin because my kid has ARFID, and they will literally only eat one kind of thing.
Here's one that I had not heard of before researching this episode, and I just thought it was interesting. Does your kid tend to zone out at stressful times, like underreact, really underreact? I had a kid who, like, we went to Disney World, and they kind of just froze and acted like they weren't there while the parade was going by. And I'm like, are you having a good time or not?
I'm going to give you an Oldilocks alert. Back in my day, Cindy Brady on the game show.
Oh, okay. Cindy Brady on the game show, right? When Cindy
Brady bragged forever. She was going to be on TV. She was going to be on a game show. Right. And she was like holding it over her siblings. And then she got on the game show and she just stared into space with a terrified face the whole time because she had
dorsal vagal shutdown.
Okay.
This is sometimes even beyond freeze. Like, a kid might even fall asleep. In my Fresh Take with Genevieve Kingston, she wrote, Did I Ever Tell You? She talked about how her mom was sick when she was growing up. And then there were a couple times in her childhood when her parents would sit them down, and she and her brother knew it was coming. We're going to have another talk about mom's illness and how it's progressed. And she said, I would react by running around the room and singing and dancing and trying to stop it from happening by performing. And her brother would fall asleep. He would just be like, night, night, and fall asleep on the couch. That's dorsal vagal shutdown. Isn't that interesting?
Humans are the brain is an amazing organ. God bless it.
Yeah. So dorsal vagal shutdown is a state where the body and mind power down as a survival response. Your heart rate slows, your digestion slows, your energy drops. It can look like numbness or dissociation or even fainting.
I was going to say, I believe the vagus nerve. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I have a niece who is one. And so that makes me basically a doctor. But I know the vagus nerve is the nerve that controls. It's why you faint, right? Something hits your vagus nerve.
Yeah, exactly. It's this nerve that runs down the whole left side of your body, and it moves you from a sympathetic state into a parasympathetic state. And you want the vagus nerve to be working well. It's kind of counterintuitive. If the vagus nerve is stimulated, you will relax. So the vagal nerve here is being shut down, I guess. And that's why.
That is fascinating, that story about the kid running around and the kid falling asleep. And I think it's so fundamental, but I forget to do it all the time. Just getting curious about what's going on with your kids.
Yep.
And starting from the point of view of, okay, they're not giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time. And sometimes we've talked about this, that we had an event that happened when my children were little that was just absolutely tragic and horrible. And it was so fascinating because we knew the impetus for it. And because it was an outsized tragic event, watching a group of second graders respond to it was fascinating. I mean, the kids who would make jokes about it, the kids who would cry all day, every day, the kids who would probably fall asleep. Like, your body is designed to protect you. And I think sometimes you might have that instinct to be like, I'm telling you, your mother is sick. Wake up and stop singing and dancing. Both of those ways are absolutely insane and bonkers. But getting curious, and I think it can be really hard because I'm not in the mood for it, basically, when I tell my kids something and I'm like, oh, that's right. This is a transition. And now we got to do the whole thing. Sometimes I'm just like, can you just not?
Right.
But the answer is no, they cannot just.
Right. They cannot. Right. This is something that's happening. If you're somebody who's prone to dorsal vagal shutdown, you're going to just go numb and dissociate at certain times. It's not a problem unless they're doing it all day long at school and they kind of become unreachable for long periods of time. Like, you'll know if this applies to your kid. This one is on here mostly as a thing that I found interesting, that there's a name for something that most of us have seen a kid do at some point.
And I think it gives you that perspective of, am I yelling at Amy for having brown hair, or am I yelling at Amy for like behavior she's choosing? And that's where I think with kids, you could get a little off.
Yeah. Speaking of things that might not be their fault after all, does your older kid, doesn't have to be your older kid, but this tends to happen with older kids, have a hard time waking up in the morning? Like a really hard time? Like you have to go up. This happened to me with one of my children. Like, I'm up. And then 10 minutes later, they're sound asleep on the floor.
Yeah,
like
we had a war last week.
Get up. Yeah.
Why didn't you wake me up? I woke you up 3 times. Literally saw you get out of bed and put your feet on the ground with your eyes open. Yeah. And it was, I'm now late and you let me oversleep. And both of us were pretty mad.
Yeah.
And both of us were kind of right.
Yeah. Well, don't be too mad because that might be delayed sleep-wake phase disorder.
I have this, I think.
DSWPD. Sleep researcher Dr. Charles Czeisler described it in the late 1970s, looking at circadian rhythms that suggested this is a circadian rhythm disorder where your biological clock is shifted later. He's talking about something a little specific here, that somebody with DSWPD, delayed sleep-wake phase disorder, can't fall asleep or don't get deeply asleep until like 2 a.m.
This is me, by the way. I got a Fitbit for Christmas. And my husband and I always joke because he is the guy who's like, I'm going to fall asleep. In my life, I don't think I've ever fallen asleep in under 45 minutes. I just cannot fall asleep.
Yeah.
And he then wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning and he's up for the day. If you woke me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and we like, come outside, there's a robber here, I could go out, call the police, send the robber away, and then they go back and fall right back asleep. And we have these watches now that track our sleep.
Yes.
And it's crazy. He falls asleep and he falls into deep sleep.
Immediately.
Like 3 minutes in.
That's what I do. Right. It's like jumping off a diving board. Right.
I am in light sleep the whole night, and then I fall into deep sleep at like 5 a.m.
How about that?
And so it actually made me feel better because, of course, being a person who doesn't wake up and start, tap dancing in the morning, I've always been considered kind of lazy and like, oh, she loves to sleep. But I actually fall deeper asleep right before waking up.
There you go.
Listen, everybody, I have DSPD, DSWPD.
DSPD/DSWPD. Please use the full name.
Don't judge me.
There you go. And it's kind of the perfect example. Like, it's in the data on the watch, right? We don't have that concrete thing with some of the other things we've talked about today, but it's a thing. And then understanding what it is, there's probably something you can do about it. I don't know. And there's also ways you can accommodate it. Like, okay, shift your day earlier. We don't record at 8 a.m. for a reason. I mean, neither of us are ready at 8 a.m., but there's things you can do to make this work. And when it's a hard thing for your kid because they have to be on the bus at 6:50 a.m., it's not because they're lazy or a bad person. Get them a sleep tracker and see if this is happening.
2 things I think that we've come to today. And one is that the value is knowledge. It's the enemy of shame to say, listen, you're not just a lazy slob. You actually fall into your deepest sleep right before waking up. So it is harder for you to get out of bed than other people. And then the other thing is to say diagnosis is different than behavior. You can change behavior, but it helps to change your behavior to know your diagnosis. So it doesn't mean like, oh, by the way, hon, you are going to now take care of the kids until noon because I need to sleep in.
I have
until noon.
DSPD.
I have PSMDY or whatever it was called. But knowledge is power and knowledge works against shame. But then behavior, you can still hold firm lines on.
Okay.
Like, yeah, you may have pathological demand avoidance, and there may be ways that we can structure the way we ask you to do things, Dr. No, to make them more appealing to you or make them less stressful. And I have gotten much better about, I have a kid and I'm like, do not make demands of them before 9 a.m. They're red brain.
Right, just why bother? Right.
Why? It's just going to cause a fight.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, I will learn again and again that the hard left transition is not good for one of my kids. Doesn't mean I'm never going to do it because I am a human being who sometimes is like, hey, we're going to change this up. We're not going to go to that place. We're going to go to this place. But it doesn't mean that you get to not come. It doesn't mean that you get to have a 45-minute tantrum. It just means, and even in this conversation that I was having with this kid in the transition, it was, this is hard for you. This is why you're having this reaction. What are the strategies that we use when we feel this way? Because instead of just fighting of like, I can't believe you're always so difficult about this. And I can't believe that you just sprung this on me and fighting about the tip of the iceberg, we're now hopefully having a conversation. It doesn't mean it goes fine, but it does mean that we're able to be like, okay, we're actually talking about what's under the iceberg. We're not just fighting about the tip of the iceberg.
I just wanted to say one thing, too, that across everything we've talked about, the line that I'm trying to keep clear is that the line between like, this is something everybody does, and this is something that I, as a parent, need more support, or maybe the kid needs more support or scaffolding. It's the impact on the daily life, right? The degree,
absolutely,
the persistence, the impact on your daily life. If it's being run by pathological demand avoidance or restricted food intake, then get the support that you need.
And you've talked about this as a mom who's had some chronic medical issues with your kids, that being that advocate when you're getting back, all kids do this, they'll eat when they're hungry, that you can say, I'm actually going to go to someone who understands ARFID because I'm not going to keep having the same conversation with my pediatrician who says, just feed them the vitamins. That I think that understanding these conditions can help you be a better medical advocate for your kid as well.
Good thing we solved delayed sleep-wake disorder. Delayed sleep-wake phase disorder. It's not a problem anymore. We solved it.
I've self-diagnosed. I've got it, people. This is a great episode to share with people you know who might be struggling with some of these things with their kids, to say, hey, I know you've been having this issue, or just I found a lot of really interesting information in this episode. If so, you can just share it right from the app. You can send them to our website, whatfreshhellpodcast.com, our Facebook group. We're everywhere. You know how to find us. Let someone else know about this episode because that's how we grow as a podcast.
We would love that. And with that, we will talk to you next week.
Thanks so much for listening.
You can't reason with the sun. Trust us, we've tried. This summer, it's time to put that angry ball of fire on mute. Columbia's OmniShade technology is engineered to protect you from the sun's harsh rays that can burn and damage your skin. The sun is relentless, but so is our gear. Level up your summer at Columbia.com to spend more time outside and less time slathering on aloe lotion. You're welcome. Columbia, engineered for whatever.